welcome to the pre-taping of our history tape number 533 that will be played later in November. We're delighted. This is November the 1st, and this is 2004, and we are very honored today to bring you the history of the city of Grand Prairie. It happened in Grand Prairie, has been in force for many long years to be able to reach that 533 number, and we're just so pleased today to have a person in this dais, on the dais, in seat number 1 that has been very, very important to history in Grand Prairie, Texas. And it's the very same way this very day it's continuing to happen. And the Honorable Mayor Charles England is our person to interview today. And we're bringing him in with the title of the Post-Breeders' Cup Report. Welcome, Mayor.
Thank you, Ruthie. It's good to be here again.
Mayor England, we're just so excited to have you here because the Breeders' Cup has reached its climax and has finished. And now you're going to get to take a rest for maybe 30 minutes.
Well, I'll tell you that it was a great day for Grand Prairie, and it does feel good that it's come and gone and to be such a success.
Yes.
Real pleased.
Now, there are many people probably in our viewing audience that don't know the history of the Breeders' Cup coming to Grand Prairie, Texas. And you and several other people have caused that to happen. But I'd like for you to give a little mini history and look out into your camera and tell the people why we got to have the Breeders' Cup on October the 30th at Lone Star Park.
Well, Ruthie, I can tell you back when the track was being built, was completed, I believe, in '97, I really never heard of the Breeders' Cup, really didn't know that much about horse racing. And I've been to Louisiana Downs a couple of times, but just social outings, I didn't know that much about the horse racing industry. But I found out pretty quick from Corey Johnson that the Breeders' Cup was a big event, an international event that was the premier event for horse racing. And his goal and his thought was maybe someday we could bring that to Lone Star Park. So we started working toward that goal, toward that end, and actually, before the track was even completed, went to our first Breeders' Cup in 1997, I believe, was the first Breeders' Cup that we attended, and met D.G. Van Cleve, who heads up the Breeders' Cup, the executive that's over the Breeders' Cup, and let him know of our interest. And I think it was kind of like, hey kid, stick around. Maybe when you're old enough, we'll let you come. But we kept going, and we kind of joke with DG now that we felt like we were kind of stalking him for about 7 years there. But I think finally he saw that the success of Lone Star Park, and had heard about us from a lot of owners and trainers, and we finally had an opportunity to make that presentation before their board of directors in Lexington, Kentucky. And Corey Johnson did a great job of preparing that presentation. Wayne Hanks and I went along, and I made a presentation on behalf of the Sports Corporation and the city, and it came off just like we wanted it to. And as a result, they voted unanimously, the board of directors, about 35, 36 people on that board to give the Breeders' Cup to Grand Prairie. We really weren't planning on having it this year. We thought we were going to have it in 2005, but they had some reconstruction they had to do at Churchill Downs, so it changed the order. So we really put this on a year before we'd originally planned. So that really made us have to double up and get going. But I'm so proud that Grand Prairie is the only track, Lone Star Park, the only track in the history of the Breeders' Cup, this was the 21st running of the Breeders' Cup, and the only track in the history of the Breeders' Cup that was under 50 years old to be able to host that event. So it was quite an honor for Lone Star Park, for Corey Johnson, and certainly for our city to be able to host that kind of event. I think it came off, it was textbook Saturday, and a lot of hard work for the last 2 years has gone into that. The police chief and the fire chief have both gone to the last 2 Breeders' Cup and taken some of their key staff members, and so we were prepared. They did it right. The traffic, the security was was just like we planned it to be.
So you really had to case the joint of 2 or 3 Breeders' Cups to be able to know whether or not you felt that the city of Grand Prairie could handle that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, our track is, and we had a lot of help from when we finally got the Breeders' Cup. Then TxDOT jumped in and helped us on the expansion and the new bridge over the Trinity at Beltline and I-30. So that needed to be done anyhow, but I can assure you it got moved up several years with the Breeders' Cup coming to town. So the state, the governor, the House, and the Senate both helped promote that financially. So,
did they have to pass special legislation
they did.
For you all to be able to do that, maybe?
Well, they had to pass special legislation in order for them to be able to participate financially. And what they actually did was waive the normal cut that they get on a big race day like that to go back into the development back into the track for all the infrastructure and all those kind of things we had to do. And I know you were there and you saw how many seats and suites and all those things that had to be brought in, and actually some permanent construction, a new holding barn for the internet for the horses coming in from out of the country. Of course, the Beltline Road expansion, the new barns, a new meeting banquet room. There will be permanent additions to the park that we'll be able to enjoy forever. So, but there was a lot of help from a lot of people, and we appreciate that. It takes that to put on that kind of event.
I understand some people saw all of the extra seats that were there. They did not realize that those are temporary seats and can be moved to the next Breeders' Cup where they need extra seats, and they thought all of that was a permanent thing, but that is not the case.
That's right. Those awful lot of the seats were temporary. In fact, a lot of those seats, all of those suites came from the Riders' Cup that the big golf tournament they had up in the Northeast just a few weeks ago. There's a company that does those kinds of things for big golf tournaments and special events all around the country, and but those suites, they'll be moving those out, those bleachers. We did have some permanent seating down on the apron that will be their box seats that will be there permanently, and that's good because we really didn't have much accommodations for general admission patrons, and we need to do that. So that's all those seats down on the apron are going to stay. So that will be that'll be a great addition. The track will be. Was
the pavilion used as part of the Breeders' Cup, or was it a separate standing entity?
No, the pavilion, they sold seats. That was a good, in fact, I talked to some people that watched it from the pavilion and said that was a great place to be on Saturday. But they had a gourmet buffet and seating, of course, so that you could watch on the big screens, or you could walk outside and around the pavilion and see it live either way. So I'm glad you asked that because I really didn't think about the pavilion being that great a seat, but they said it was great.
I imagine that was better than being out in some of the others that were out in the open sunshine.
Well, the sunshine, that was, if the ones that didn't bring a cap were in trouble because I said it was pretty warm out there. But what a beautiful day. We were, kind of nervous about midnight on Friday. Came a little thunderstorm at my house, and I thought, my goodness, we don't need this. But it didn't rain long, and Saturday was beautiful. The track was in great shape, and the sun was shining, and in fact, the sun kept shining even through the races yesterday until late. So we had a great weekend for racing.
Tell me about the accommodations for some of these very high-powered horses that were brought in from abroad and et cetera. Was that a stem winding event to be able to protect them and to put them in special places and quarantine everything around it?
It was, and a lot of planning went into that. Of course, those are some of the best race horses in the world came into that there. So security was really important. We had a lot of extra security in the stables, the barn area. We built a brand new barn for the holding barn, for the quarantine barn, state of the art. One thing all the owners and the breeders, the trainers loved were our facilities. I mean, their tracks are larger than Lone Star Park, but if there's not a track in the country that's any nicer, they're really as nice as Lone Star Park. And they liked that. They liked the accommodations for the animals, and of course for the jockeys, we've got the state-of-the-art jockey quarters behind the saddling paddock. So you know, it was a big hit. I think everybody got a good taste of Texas hospitality. I was talking to Chief Shaw and had a letter that some lady delivered this morning that was a volunteer out the track. We had several, I think over 1,000 volunteers. Most of those were from Grand Prairie. A lady wrote me a personal letter delivered to the office this morning, you know, how thrilled she was and how many people that said good things about Texas and about Grand Prairie. So it was a chance for us to showcase our state and our town, and I think we did it in a first-class way.
In transportation, there were people at 6 o'clock parked up at the Grand Prairie ISD near the Gopher Warrior Bowl, where they parked and shuttled people. Did you have shuttles all over?
Those were the employees that had to be on it. It reported at 6 o'clock Saturday morning. So the employees parked at Grand Prairie at the high school, Grand Prairie High, and they shuttled those people over. So, because parking was a premium, that was it was hard to work in that many
cars. The logistics of that is a nightmare, Mayor. How did you do that?
Well, you know, I can tell you Lone Star really did that, planned it out. You know, and as you saw, they were parking on every piece of real estate that was out there, that even the unpaved part. So that's why we didn't need any rain. We didn't need those cars to be
bogged down,
like down in mud, and that's pretty much black gumbo out there. So we were glad, very, you know, thankful that it didn't rain any more than it did.
The planning for Beltline Road northbound from I-30 to be one way, how did that work?
Well, Chief Shaw and Deputy Chief Shaw and Jim Sparks worked that out, and along with Tex Dodd, but that was Mike Shaw and Jim Sparks. That was their brainchild, and gosh, it couldn't have worked better. That it was easy in, easy out the whole day. So I've seen this when there were a lot more traffic jams with 20,000 people at the track than there was with 53,000 people on Saturday. So they did an outstanding job of moving that traffic in and out. Of course, we got the new bridge over the levee,
the levee
bridge, and they brought all the buses, all the charters came in down MacArthur and over the levee, so that and buses can slow up the traffic. So that kept the buses off of Beltline Road, and you know, they had a great plan, and I'm so proud.
I rode a bus from City Hall down MacArthur and over the new bridge, but we were stopped before we got to the bridge. They had security and surveillance. They looked in the bus. They did not make us go through the turnstiles like they did, but then when we arrived at Lone Star Park, every person that got off of that bus had to go through a definite security screening. It was like at the airport, Mayor.
Well,
how in the world did you logistically get all of that planned?
They, you know, they brought all those screening devices outside where it didn't really back up going into where the tickets, where the turnstiles are. So they had it planned out, and it worked perfect. So, but the security was that was the two things that I worried the most about was security and traffic, and we were in charge of both of those items. The city was, and of course Lone Star, most of the planning on the parking and all the things that happened inside the track was their responsibility, but the parking security was ours, and you know, of course the whole meet went off great, but certainly the traffic and our people did a great job on security. Over 500 security personnel there. So from the FBI to the drug enforcement, the DEA,
yes,
the state troopers, you know, the Grand Prairie Police. Almost every policeman was on duty on Saturday, either at the track or in some other part of the city. In fact, I think they were all on duty. We had the security was great. You saw a lot of security every place you looked, and that was good.
The Wayne Hanks paddock area that was out there that was groomed beautifully, Mayor, with all of the sculptures and all of the wonderful flowers and everything. Was Lone Star responsible for that, or was the city?
No, that was Lone Star Park. Jeff Greco and his crew took care of that. Well, it was beautiful. was out there Friday afternoon late, and they were planting a lot of those flowers fresh as late as 6, 7 o'clock on Friday to make sure
everything was just
right.
perfect.
And
Well, the
was.
people really did gang to that place.
Oh,
they
yeah.
they were there. They loved seeing the horses as they
Yeah.
came in and made the circle.
Well, the Breeders' Cup horses, all thoroughbreds are beautiful animals, there's no
Yes.
question, but the Breeders' Cup horses are special. You can almost look at them in their eyes and their movement. You can tell they seem to know they're real special, or they're beautiful. They're beautiful animals. Those Breeders' Cup, they're the best in the world. So to get to see them up close is exciting, and that's why that paddock area is always one of the most popular places at the Breeders' Cup. It has been at every one I've been to.
Well, we had some pretty famous jockeys here also that were riding those. I thought that was a real drawing card, and we got a lot of good media on that, Mayor.
Oh yeah, they had the International Jockey Championship
Yes.
on Friday before the Breeders' Cup, and that was a fun. Over 25,000 people were there on Friday, so another great crowd, and 53,000 of course for the Breeders' Cup. So it was a great weekend for Grand Prairie, great weekend for horse racing in Texas and for the whole
Great
metropolitan
economic
area.
boom for Grand Prairie, maybe?
Oh, no question. I wish we had, and that's going to happen. And I think the Breeders' Cup will bring so much attention to the racetrack that I feel like in the near future we'll get a 4-star or 5-star hotel in the near proximity there, and I hope so. But all of our hotel rooms were sold out.
Yes.
So the hotel people in Grand Prairie did great, and the restaurants did. I wish the headquarters hotel could have been in Grand Prairie, but hey, we'll share. We'll next time maybe we'll have one.
For the people watching our show, they may not know about your sports authority. Would you tell them a little bit about how that arrangement is, that you're a special entity representing the city and what you do?
We are. The Grand Prairie Sports Facilities Development Corporation is an entity that was authorized by the state legislature back in the late 80s, late 80s, I guess. Actually, that law was passed and authorizing that when the ballpark in Arlington was built.
Yes.
When they did that, we kind of copycatted Arlington on the structure because it had already been approved by the legislature, and but the Sports Authority is made up of 4 elected officials and 3 citizens of Grand Prairie that the City Council appoints to that board. It's a 7-member board. Of course, you're a member of that board, as you well know, and I appreciate you serving on it, along with Frank Robertson and Jim Swafford and myself are the 4 elected officials, and then Curtis Anderson and Brian Arnold and
Wayne Hanks
make up the
3.
The 3. And Wayne Hanks has
Hadn't he
been on
been
the board
wonderful?
since the get-go, and he loves the Grand Prairie and he loves Lone Star Park. He's had so much to do with the success of the Breeders' Cup and the success of the track that I could never say enough good things about Wayne and his time and effort and emotion that he spent on Lone Star Park. He's made a
And
big difference.
some of the others that were on there, Terry Jackson and her husband were your guests recently, and also Alan Brown, who was on,
That's
and,
right.
and several other past members of that spent so much time and so much thought at the beginnings of the Lone Star Park.
They were R.J. Garcia, who
Yes.
helped during the sales tax election, and Alan Brown, you mentioned all those people played such an important part in Lone Star being what it is, and gosh, I'm so indebted, grateful.
Do you think you're going to get the Breeders' Cup back ever again?
Well, I think so. I haven't visited with Mr. Van Cleef personally, but I read the article. He was quoted in both newspapers as saying he certainly sees it coming back to Lone Star in the future. It's a rotation. You're going to have it at Belmont and Churchill and in Santa Anita. Those places are sort of permanent on the rotation. But I feel like we had such success that I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get in on that rotation, which would make it come every 5 or 6 years. And it'll take us 5 or 6 years to get rested up enough to put on another one. So
really will.
that's okay. But just to be in that circle of famous historic racetracks is really an honor for Lone Star Park and for our city. We've got a lot of national publicity Saturday. There's no question about it. We wouldn't have had enough money to ever buy that kind of publicity that
How
we got.
about that 5 hours that you got on NBC?
Right. 5 hours live on NBC
Straight
nationally.
through.
Right.
How did you arrange that? Who was in charge of that?
I'd like to take credit for it, but the Breeders' Cup out of Lexington, they have a contract with NBC. Of course, I think that the rights to show that Breeders' Cup is bid between the media, ABC, NBC, CBS, and so that NBC, I guess, won the bid this year, and apparently it's really won. It's not only here but internationally. It's a real popular Saturday sport.
I'm sure that Grand Prairie got its just due on that, didn't they?
Yeah, every time one of those horses crossed the finish line, we saw the Lone Star Park Grand Prairie with in the flower box where it spelled Lone Star and Grand Prairie out. I talked to my good friend Eddie Patton this morning. He watched it from home, and he said every race you could see Lone Star Park Grand Prairie on national TV, so that's great. We got a lot of publicity, a lot of good, favorable publicity.
Now, you had a lot of people in Grand Prairie, Texas that didn't get to go to the Breeders' Cup because I believe the tickets were put on a drawing basis. Did you have so many people that were buying for those you had to draw them out of a hat?
That's right. It's the first time in the history of the Breeders' Cup that it's been sold out, and it sold out early. It sold out 3 or 4 weeks before the race. It's the only time they've ever had a Breeders' Cup where there were no general admission tickets. But the demand was so high for tickets, and we could only get so many in that facility, 53,000 plus. But there was such a demand that they had no general admission. Every ticket was a reserved seat, and unfortunately, a lot of it wasn't. The Breeders' Cup, Lone Star Park in the city had nothing to do with the sale of those tickets.
That's what I wanted you to say.
That's all handled through the Breeders' Cup in Lexington, and they have a national lottery. It's not just for granted, it's a national lottery, and you send in your money or your credit card number, whatever, months in advance, and then they draw, and if you, they have so many in each section that they sell to the general public, and if you get it, you're in good shape. If you don't, you have to buy them from a ticket agency or a scalper, I guess. And there were people, I got a kick, there were people scalping tickets, and who would ever thought we'd had ticket scalping?
And on the internet, I believe there was some for sale on the internet.
Oh, there were, and most of them are double, triple, some quadruple the face amount. So it was a hot ticket. It was a good ticket to have, hard ticket to have for last Saturday.
Now, you worked very hard to make I-30 and Beltline one of the premier sites in Grand Prairie because you knew so many people were going. Are you real happy with the mural and some of the other things that the amenities there?
I have a lot of. I am. I mean, it's. I wish. Yes, I think it's a great addition to the city. It's, that's certainly one of the main entry points into our city, and with all those people coming in for Breeders' Cup, that was a good place to start. We want to do some things to other parts of the city on the entrances too, and we have, but I-30 Beltline is it's an eye catcher, and I just wish we'd had time for a lot of the landscape to be more mature than it was, but we just got it in. But it's beautiful. I think we did a great job on that, and got a lot of favorable comments, a lot of TV coverage just on that intersection over the past week or so.
Especially the art mural. I think
Yes.
people were really, really impressed with that.
They were.
I want to ask you about the local media, just the Metroplex media. Did you have any idea how many minutes, hours that we received on all of the different channels? Every time you would tune in, 2 or 3 days before this, there was a report on. I hope we'll get a copy of all of that, Mayor, because it was magnificent the way, because I would just switch from channel to channel after one would say, you're going to be in Grand Prairie, you're going to be at Lone Star Park, the Breeders' Cup's here. Every channel really gave you all wonderful coverage, and are we prepared to preserve some of that for historical purposes?
Well, I hope you, Ms. Jackson, we depend on you. I mean, and I'm so glad. This is going to go down is an important date in Grand Prairie history. It's the first time this kind of event, sporting event, has been held in the whole Metroplex ever, in
Yes.
a national, worldwide sporting event. So
Yeah.
that made history for our city, and I know you'll do a great job in
We're going to insist, aren't we? We're going to insist that everybody preserve their tapes.
I talked to a reporter at the Star-Telegram Friday afternoon, and I read his article Saturday morning. He said that he had, I guess you could pull up on the computer now, but he said Friday there were 1,550 some odd hits on Grand Prairie in newspapers all across the country about Grand Prairie, Texas.
Oh, isn't that good?
So that's pretty good.
Did you
A lot
ever
of
think you
people-
were going to be that famous a mayor?
I tell you what, I'm just glad Grand Prairie is on the map. It's
It's about time.
It's about
isn't it?
time, and we deserve it. It's a great city, and what a great location, great people like you that make it a great city. It's fun.
We have about 3 minutes left on this interview. I want you to look at it, number 2 here,
Okay.
and give Brian a real good reason for making you real exciting, because I want you to thank so many people. And I'll wind you down like this when we're at the end of this interview, because you've got a lot of folks that you're beholden to.
Well, I do, and I've got to thank. I got to start with Wayne Hanks,
Yes.
my good friend and the vice president of the Grand Prairie Sports Corporation, who has worked not only on the Breeders' Cup from the first day we started construction on the track. He made sure it was built the way it was supposed to be built, and then carried that right on through the Breeders' Cup. And what a great asset he's been for Lone Star Park in the city. And then, of course, Corey Johnson and Jeff Greco for helping bring the Breeders' Cup. Corey especially played such a big part. What a class person both of those guys are. One of the success for Lone Star is because of Corey and Jeff. They're great people power, have great people skills, and they've been a great asset for our city. Of course, the staff. Start with the city manager allowing Cliff Nelson, the fire chief, and Glenn Hill, the police chief, and Deputy Chief Shaw, all the many hours they put in on planning this for the security and the traffic. Jim Sparks, our director of traffic, who did a great job. All those guys went together to Santa Anita last year and brought back a lot of good information. We're in Chicago the year before at Arlington Park to observe it there. So they put all that together and made it work. To the people on the committee that we had a big gala almost all month, and B.J. Nichols, and old-time Grand Prairie guy, and I know I still call him Bobby Joe. I think he wants, since he's in his 50s now, he wants to be B.J., but to me he's still Bobby Joe.
How about
Nichols,
our city manager?
The city manager, Tom Hart, certainly.
Was invaluable
Terry
to you.
Blanton, who was on that Breeders' Cup committee with Wayne Hanks, and I can tell you that one of the best hires and Tom Hart's made a lot of good hires, but none better than our Parks and Recreation Director
Rick
has done. He and Wayne Hanks were joint chairs of that promotion, and did a great job.
You have a half a second now to hold this up.
Well, this was kind of the official that the Breeders' Cup
let's turn it around
committee
to Brian
had these
here.
little bags made up, and we gave these to a lot of the owners and breeders that came in, and to people on the staff and the guests that we had Saturday for the race.
It's a wind-up. It's a wind-up, Mayor.
This is the Breeders' Cup official Breeders' Cup baggie.
And you brought that to whom? To Louis?
I did.
Tovar.
This is for Louis for all the
All the help
publicity
he's
you
given
guys
us.
have given us.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do, and document it with the mayor of Grand Prairie, His Honor, Charles England.